So we left this morning at 8:30 from our home in Eagle, Nebraska, and we pulled the camper about 2 hours to a town in Iowa called Clarinda. And it's got some historical things in Clarinda, but I forgot my water hose. So I have to go buy a water hose. This is called the Nodaway River Valley County Park. And it's only costs $12 a night. And it has electric and water. And then a place to dump. So it's a good deal. There's no lake here or a river or pond or anything like that, but just lots of woods. And there's trails everywhere in the woods. So we're going to leave now and go look for the axe house. And I'll tell you more about that when we get going. So I'm in the town of 1Villisica, Iowa. And I'm standing right across from the house where the brutal murder of an entire family and 2 guests was committed. And at the time, this was, the town didn't extend in that direction over there. So, on the night of June 11th to June 12th, morning of June 12th, 1912, the Moore family, the night before, went to a party at a church. They had 4 girls, and they brought home 2 other girls as guests around 9:30, 10 o'clock. The next morning, the neighbor, which would have been in that house right there, noticed there was no activity in the Moore house. And so she went to the house, and the door was locked. And she couldn't get in, and nobody answered when she knocked on the door. So she called the brother of Mr. Moore, and he broke the door down. And he discovered upstairs Mr. Moore and Mrs. Moore were dead, and they'd been killed with an axe. And Mr. Moore, his head was split open. The rest of the kids were all killed with the blunt end of the axe, the wide portion. And so all the girls, there were 6 girls, all young, and they were all murdered. Now, they found some cigarette butts up in the attic. And so whoever it was had waited until the family came home, and then they murdered them and slipped out a window. So to this day, the murders have never been solved. Although several people, all men, were put on trial, but they never had enough evidence to convict them. And so to this very day, the 1Villisica murder has never been solved. And that's the end of the story. You can look up the 1Villisica murders. It's on the internet. And they actually did a documentary, TV documentary. So there's nothing else in this town. Typical little Midwest country Iowa town. And we're going to go back to the campground. So on another thought, I have Verizon as my cell phone service, and there's no Verizon here. So I have no internet. It's terrible. I don't know what people did without the internet. Okay, let's toodaloo. I should have told you about the 1Villisica house was that it's now haunted. And you can spend the night there. You have to pay money. It's like a bed and breakfast or Airbnb. But people say that house is really haunted. Things happen inside there that scare the crap out of you. So, we drove down about 20 miles south to the town of Clarinda. We are in the county park, and this is Page County's courthouse, and on the other side they're doing lots of renovation. I walked completely around the town square. I could not find a date when this thing was built, but I would say between 1890 and 1900, somewhere in that, because that's when this town was built. And this is a typical town square in the Midwest. Look at those stores over there, and it's pretty cool. And then there's a statue to the Civil War. So Iowa fought for the Union in the Civil War. So I have to find a water hose for my camper. I forgot it at the house. And so we are just going to find a hardware store. Oh, and we're also going to look at the house where Glenn Miller was born. You can Google that guy too. So Glenn Miller became quite famous for his orchestra and some of the songs that he composed. And he was born in this house March 1st, 1904. And of course, there's been movies made of him. He actually enlisted in the Army for World War II, but he was not a fighter. He had an orchestra that he toured the Army bases with to help the morale of the American soldier. Now, sometime in the 40s, I think it was 42, he and his band got on an airplane. I'm thinking it was in Europe. And it never arrived at its destination. And they never found the wreckage. Glenn Miller simply disappeared in an airplane. So, and that's pretty much, you can also Google Glenn Miller and get the rest of the story. But you see they had an outside well. So we are about done with Clarinda. There is a really great museum here, and we're going to, it's closed now. We're going to go there tomorrow. It opens at 10. And it's got a lot of Indian stone tools in there. And I'm interested in that. So, we'll go back to the campground and pop a top again. So this county park, called Nodaway Valley, River Valley. So in the direction I'm looking right now, down in the bottom of the hill is the Nodaway River. I don't know anything about the Nodaway River other than that sounds like an Indian name. But this little park is really beautiful, and it sits up on top of a bluff that overlooks the Nodaway River. And then not far away is the town. It has electricity and water, and then you have to go and dump your tanks at a central spot. And all that for $12 a night. So there's no streams here or pond. But as you can see, they mow a lot, and there's just trails through the woods everywhere that they mow. So it's just great to walk Georgie. And this is kind of where I'm standing now is away from the campgrounds. But I can't believe it. Verizon does not have a signal here. They don't have any towers. You can only get AT&T and US Cellular. So that's where the campground is back in there. There's only 15 spots that have electricity and water. So I don't know how big the park is, but there's primitive camping over in that direction. There's another one of these community shelters where you can have picnics. I haven't seen much wildlife. I thought last night, you know, we'd be visited by maybe some raccoons but didn't see anything, and Georgie did not get agitated. So that's a good thing. We have coyotes at our house, and my God, they drive her crazy. And late at night and early in the morning, they're all howling. So, a little bit later, we're going to visit the museum, and then we're going to pack it up and go back home. Okay, so we're at the Historical Center, and this is Goldenrod, and it is the birthplace of the 4-H. My European friends won't understand what 4-H is, but it was started in 1901 by a woman. And it was to teach homemaking skills, and later it branched out into farming skills. And it was a youth club. And then I want to talk to you about something I didn't know about, and it's on that sign right there.